Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 549th Board Meeting of the California Regional Water Quality Control Board, Central Valley Region. I'd like to introduce the board members and staff at this time. On my far left is Raji Bar of Bakersfield. Sitting next to Raji is Carmen Ramirez of Atwater. My immediate left is John Constantino of Grass Valley. On my far right is Dan Markham of Fall River Mills. Sitting next to Dan is Bob Schneider of Davis. My immediate right is Denise Cadera of Allensworth, and my name is Carl Longley from Fresno. I'll now introduce Pamela Creedon, the Executive Officer, who will introduce her staff.
Good morning, Dr. Longley and members of the board. Across the room from me is Renee Smith, a staff services analyst with the board, and she'll be keeping our time. Next to Renee is Andrew Altavote, Assistant Executive Officer in the Sacramento office, and next to Andrew is Stephanie Yu, Staff Counsel for the board. And to my far left is Kieran Lanfranchi Rizzardi, Executive Assistant for the board. Next to Kieran is Adam Lapitz. Adam Lapitz, Assistant Executive Officer in the Sacramento office, and next to Adam is Patrick Palupa. I wanted to say Andrew Dieringer. Patrick Palupa, Senior Staff Counsel for the board, and to my right is Andrew Dieringer. And I don't say your last name correctly, and I apologize. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Staff Counsel for the board. In the audience, we have Clay Rogers, Assistant Executive Officer in the Fresno office, Clint Schneider, Assistant Executive Officer in the Redding office, Linda Bracamani, Assistant Executive Officer in the Sacramento office, and a number of staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roger, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We had a series of items on the agenda yesterday, very important items having to do with the Irrigated Lands Program, and board consultation took a long time. Consequently, we did not finish up yesterday's agenda, and we have left off of yesterday's agenda item 18, update on the compressed administrative civil liability process, was an information item. So we're going to carry that over to today's agenda, and I think probably the best place to do that, do we have a representative here from Office of Enforcement?
Dr. Longley. Sorry, I don't believe anybody from Office of Enforcement.
I had
was able
asked
to
them
make
if
it
they
today.
would get somebody back out here today,
Okay.
and I don't see them in the audience. The reason I'm asking that is because if they're not here, I would propose that we do it after item 23.
Dr. Longley, we do have a number of people here for the uncontested calendar. And if we could clear that, that only takes about 5 minutes, then they can go, and then we can move on with our normal business. That may take longer.
But I think they should be here for your videos. Those are, you know, the Academy Awards are coming up, and we just might be able to get one in at the last minute.
I didn't think to add that sound bite at the end of the.
Okay. So where should we do item 25? After the public forum? Okay. Very good. Let me go through meeting rules and procedures. And Bruce wants to talk this morning. Very good. In order to conduct our regional board meetings in a fair and efficient manner, we will be proceeding in accordance with the meeting procedures that have been provided with a summary agenda and are available here at the staff table and upon request. They're also posted on the board's website, and they're summarized on the computer screens during the breaks. Any questions or comments regarding these procedures may be directed to Karen Lanfranchi-Rosardi, our administrative assistant, who sits over here at the staff table. At this point, are there any board member communications? We're on item 21.
So just to clarify yesterday's comment, I did meet on 2/7 with Tess Dunham on the pyrethroids issue. We had a general conversation about the topic.
I just wanted to comment on the hearings we had yesterday on the ACLs. And first, I wanted to thank fellow board members that attended those hearings. There were 2 days of hearings, and Carl and Denise were at both of them. John was at one, and Carmen at another one. And yesterday we reviewed and went through all of those. I missed the last 2. I'm sorry, but that I think was of another 4.5 hours that were spent on that item. And I think the time that my fellow board members spent in those hearings really provided opportunities for people to be heard. And I think that was really important. I just wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to thank all the staff for their work. And my feeling as we went through that process is that's the first time we've kind of, that I remember, gone through a series of these on the ag program. And I think, it's really, the process got honed, and I think it's a good way to approach these. So thank you all for the hard work that you all put in on that.
Thank you, Bob, for those comments. I concur completely. The item 18, when we do it today, we're talking about a compressed process, and if that process is to work, it's important that lessons be taken from, when they're dealing with irrigated land issues, that lessons be taken from what we have, a process I think that we have begin to develop. And I think we can certainly talk about that, and I hope to talk about that in the context of the compressed process. One of the reasons I wanted folks here from Office and Enforcement, and Andrew's here, of course, and he'll have to carry the message if they're not here. But I do concur with what you said. Any further communications? I have mentioned there's a monthly, I call it the generally monthly because it's not always monthly, Regional Board Chairs meeting. We meet once a year face-to-face, and that'll be in April this year. They don't always have a conference call, but they did this month, in February. And the subject was budget, and Pamela was on the call too. It was pretty boring. Apparently no new information. There is a little concern what's going to happen with the funds, that they're considerable, that we're going to get from EPA with the new leadership in EPA. That is one of the uncertainties at this point in time. We have a number of positions funded out of those funds. There is some Prop 80, was it Prop 84 money that's available that may fund a couple of positions. Am I correct on that, Pamela?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I heard correctly then. But in general, there wasn't much new information on the budget, other than things I've just mentioned. So that's that meeting. We'll move on now then to item 22, the public forum. And I have a card from, Bruce, I've known you a long time, and I'm not sure I ever do your last name justice. Bruce Howdeshelt? Thank you, Bruce. That's a compliment.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to compliment your staff on technology. I was able to listen to the board meeting yesterday while driving to one of our sub-watersheds, had a sediment erosion control self-certification class. And so let me back up, Bruce Hadelschelt, Northern California Water Association, Sac Valley Water Quality Coalition. And so I learned a couple of things yesterday. One, I learned that Chairman flies the same plane as my brother-in-law.
They're damn good airplanes.
Yeah, they are good. Their tail is backwards, though.
I
Isn't
know,
that correct?
that's how you tell them different.
Anyway, but in all seriousness, I wanted to join the accolades and acknowledgement that you received yesterday from your fellow board members for your 25 years of service. Next Friday, the Northern California Water Association will celebrate its 25th year. And without the institutional memory of volunteer leaders, I consider you volunteer because if you calculate what you earn per diem plus the hours like yesterday, I think it's below minimum wage. So, but without the institutional memory of folks like yourself, Bob, who's now on his second Bob Schneider 2.0, the job for both your staff and the regulated community would be more challenging. So I wanted to acknowledge your contributions to that, the many hours you've given to CV Salts and other things like that. Also yesterday, there was a conversation, board member Markham brought up his visit to Shasta County Farm Bureau, I believe it was, and some comment about where's my money going? And I just wanted to share with the board that, and I saw Tammy yesterday at the sediment erosion control self-certification class, and I mentioned that to her. But from the Sac Valley Coalition, we begin early on in the process to explain to our members and our sub-watershed coordinators where our funding goes to in surface water quality and groundwater quality. There is the 75 cents an irrigated acre, and ironically, yesterday I got to my office and there was my $1 million invoice because the fee is 75 cents an irrigated acre because the Sac Valley has 1.3 million irrigated acres. We have been number one, and I'd like to change that at some point in time. So we fund 20% of the program year after year in and year out. But anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge your contributions and address that comment. So thank you for your time, and I finished.
Thank you, Bruce. We've had conversations, of course, over fee. Don't go away, Bruce. How much is the fee from the coalition itself to its growers?
Yeah, and we're uniquely structured in the Sacramento Valley. We have 13 sub-watersheds, and why we did that is so that a member in Lake County isn't paying for the surface water quality that's done in Tehama County. And so our fees will range, which include the 75 cents an irrigated acre. So in Lake County, we're probably at $4.50 an irrigated acre because we only have 10,000 acres that need to cover program costs, whether it's surface water, groundwater, Bruce, and the 75 cents an irrigated acre. But on the valley floor, where we have about 1 million of our irrigated acres, that fee ranges, I would say it's all consistently in the mid-twos, including the state water quality fee of 75 cents. So that covers surface water, all our reporting requirements. We're in a non-assessment year so our surface water quality costs are going out and monitoring and sampling are down. Groundwater quality component costs are up, but
So you're saying mid-twos, you're
250, 275, it ranges, right?
Okay.
Some are at 215, some are at
And
280.
how much is it costing for your members to do the farm evaluation?
Because specifically for the farm evaluation, because now we're into the third year of doing it and we're picking up more efficiencies between data management. We have that. I bet you we're in the neighborhood of $150,000 for that. Now we've got the database component to it, so we've got the infrastructure, but then the data entry portion of it. So the farm evaluation goes out, it comes back. and it has to be entered, so I'm looking at, manpower that has to do that data entry. We are moving toward, by the way, having our members enter the data, so,
And what does it cost the individual member for their part of it?
That's a good question. I'll need to really kind of get back to you on that.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so I can do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity.
Is there any other individual wishing to speak to the board this morning on an issue that's not on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 25, the uncontested calendar. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider adoption of uncontested items through 30 through 35, and that includes MPDS permits, local agency management programs, otherwise known as LAMPs, waste discharge requirements, cease and desist orders. I should say waste discharge requirements and cease and desist orders. Cease and desist orders rescissions, waste discharge requirements, and MPDS permit rescissions and change of name and ownership. Does anyone wish to discuss any of these items? Are there any late revisions?
No late revisions, Dr.
No late revisions, good. We'll close the hearing. I'll call for discussion and entertain
Quick question.
yes.
Items 26 and 7, are they included, or are we doing those separately?
The-
The
Still
six
have to
and-
do an opening and closing of the hearing.
Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Carmen's moved, Denise is seconded. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Ramirez? Yes. Ms. Brar?
Yes.
Mr. Costantino?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider? Dr. Markham?
Aye.
Ms. Kadara?
Yes.
Dr. Longley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Carl, since item 27 is now uncontested, I believe?
Yes.
26 and 27, do we want to do those now too?
I think that would be a good idea, so let's move to item 26. Item 26 is the City of Reading Clear Creek wastewater treatment plant. Is there anyone here who wishes to present testimony pertaining to the City of Reading Clear Creek wastewater treatment plant, Shasta County, MPDS permit renewal? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. And are there any late revisions to that before we close?
Yes, there are. I have some late revisions
Sure.
to the Clear Creek permit, and these late revisions you should have in front of you, and there are also some on the table outside. Essentially, what they do is they reduce the sampling for chronic wet toxicity and also change the trigger for toxicity in the permit. These have been shared with the discharger, and they are okay with the revisions.
Thank you. So I'll close the hearing. Time for discussion. Looking for a motion with late revisions.
I would move to approve the matter with the late revisions as stated by Mr. Laffitz. I was going to call him by his first name.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Carmen moves, Raji seconds. Call the roll, please. And that's with late revisions.
Dr. Markham?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider? Ms. Brar?
Yes.
Ms. Ramirez? Mr. Costantino?
Aye.
Ms. Kadara? Dr. Longley?
Here.
Motion carries.
Excuse me. I think I said here. Aye. Thank you very much. We will now move to agenda item 27, consideration of time schedule order, Newmont USA Limited in Nevada County. Is anyone here? Is there anyone here to present testimony on this item? Seeing none, are there any late revisions?
No late revisions, Dr. Longley.
There are no late revisions. We'll close the hearing. Do I have a motion?
I move to adopt.
John moves.
I'll second.
Who was that? Carmen seconded. I'm surprised I didn't recognize your voice. We are ready to call the roll, please.
Ms. Ramirez? Yes. Mr. Costantino? Yes. Ms. Brower?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider? Dr. Markham?
Aye.
Ms. Kadara? Dr. Longley?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you very much. Once again, has anyone showed up from Office of Enforcement? Not too bad. We will move then to the Executive Officer's report.
So this is the time I would normally do a state of the region, and luckily, I must have had just visions of what it would be like for me today. So I'm not going to do all the speaking. We have a new format. It's going to be a video. It's long. Mine was long, but you'll get a chance to hear from all of the program managers. And so just sit back and relax. I'm sorry we don't have popcorn for you, but it'll be good. But it did highlight, I do see this as a valuable tool. Now, this was done with a camera on an iPhone and the cheapest editing tool you can get. So after this week, I'm going to talk to Linda and Dave King to see if we can't start to secure a video camera for the office and possibly with IT to upgrade our editing, because I think this is a good outreach tool for the public so that they better understand what we do.
I've spoken with Pamela about, well, she mentioned updating the brochure that they have regarding the regional board, and if this were online and had links in it to the videos, that would be, I think, an enhancement of that document.
Yeah.
In the past, and in the dark past, we had a video of the board's activities, and it was a good tool to, when you were speaking or otherwise, giving the public an idea of what we did. Among items on that video was the Cantera spill, and that was pretty graphic, quite frankly, the fish dying in the Sac River, trying to get oxygen. And it really was a good tool for the board. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea of what you're trying to do. I know that Linda can find money for a camera. She's very good at that, so.
So we'll let you do that. There will probably be a breaking point so that we can have a rest stop, and then we'll move on to the second half.
And I think you should tell the staff who are responsible for their break room, and maybe they can make popcorn by that time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And Pamela, can I ask what this gentleman's name is here?
This is Gene Coughlin.
Okay,
He
well,
is-
I want, I guess, people in the audience to know that he's the guy that solves all the issues that come with technology. I mean, when I watch the video, the feed, when I can't attend, he's responsible for making sure all the cameras are on the person that's speaking, making sure that, I look okay, making sure that, the camera pans around. And it's so engaging because I've been at meetings where it's a static camera and you don't get that sort of movement, and it makes such a difference. So I know you're always hiding in the back room. So since you're sitting in front of us, I would tell you that I really appreciate it so that people in the audience know who you are.
And
Thank you.
he's the credit. And we didn't give credits in the video, but he's the credit. He's the iPhone and the editor and the trying to please Pamela and what she wants, and it's with knowing how difficult it was to edit it. So he gets all the credit and all the blame. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so here we go.
Hi, I'm Pamela Creedon, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. And I'm here today to give you an update on our accomplishments and activities for the past year. This will be a video presentation by all the program managers and myself, so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
The Central Valley Water Board is the largest of the 9 regional boards in the state of California.
It covers about 60,000 square miles of land area, or about 40% of the total land in California. It stretches from the Oregon border in the north to the Kern County, Los Angeles county line in the south, and is bound by the Sierra Nevada mountains on the east and the Coast Range on the west. 38 of the total 58 counties in California are within our region. Nearly all of the California Delta is within the Central Valley Board's jurisdictional control. The Delta is the largest West Coast estuary, and its water provides 2/3 of the drinking water to people within California and provides water for about 3 million acres of irrigated land. The largest contiguous wetland area remaining in California is within the Central Valley that serves as a critically important habitat for approximately 60% of the Pacific flyway wintering waterfowl. The nation's second largest contiguous groundwater basin is also situated in the Central Valley. Groundwater accounts for almost 50% of the domestic, private, and public drinking water supply in the Central Valley. Some communities relying solely on groundwater to serve their needs. Groundwater also provides a large part of the irrigation supply for agriculture, especially during drought times. The Central Valley is home to nearly 80% of all the agricultural lands within California and nearly 80% of all the dairies. The population of the Central Valley is expected to increase over the years. The region is divided into 3 basins: the Sacramento River Basin, the San Joaquin River Basin, and the Tulare Lake Basin. We are governed by 2 water quality control plans, one that covers both the Sacramento and the San Joaquin River Basins, and another one that covers the Tulare Lake Basin. I'd like to now cover a little bit about our staffing. We currently have a budget for personnel services of about $34.8 million a year. This funds 243.7 positions that is made up of about 61 managers, 164 technical staff, and 18.7 support staff. We also have budget for 43 temporary help. In terms of distribution of the 243.7, 67% of that is made up of our technical staff or line staff, 17% for seniors or managers, and 6% for our supervisors, 2% for executive. 8% of our budget pays for our administrative staff. Of the staff, 88% of them are technical, and 12% are executives and administrative or others. Of the technical staff, we have 37% as engineers, 43% as geologists, and 20% as environmental scientists. Authorized positions has changed over the years, with a high point back in 2010 of 258, slowly declining as we had some troubles with our budget throughout the years. And we are now building again as a result of our new cannabis program and the oil fields program. Our distribution between the offices has changed significantly over the years, with the Sacramento office seeing fewer resources, while those in Redding and Fresno have grown quite a bit. We have 18 programs that all have program managers assigned to them throughout the various offices. For each program, we have an executive sponsor as well. In this presentation, you'll be hearing from each of our program managers their activities and accomplishments of their programs throughout the last year. In terms of what we do with our staff, 46% are dedicated to groundwater protection programs, 22% are dedicated to our surface water protection program, 7% to planning, and the remaining to executive management and enforcement. Now, under enforcement, the 14% is dedicated to our core programs for NPDES, our WDR program, and our stormwater program, which you'll be hearing more about. We will now be discussing our surface water protection program, which encompasses about 22% of our staff. These activities include the forest activities, cannabis cultivation, irrigated lands, our NPDES program, the stormwater program, and our water quality cert program. You'll now hear from each of the program managers for these programs.
Hi, this is Sue McConnell, the Irrigate Lands Regulatory Program Manager, and this is a brief overview of the program, its water quality protection elements, enforcement efforts, accomplishments from the last fiscal year, and current program priorities. The Central Valley Water Board has the largest irrigated lands program in the state, with approximately 7 million acres and 35,000 operations. Irrigate Lands activities are regulated by 9 general orders with the assistance of 14 agricultural coalitions. We're staffed with just over 18 PYs or personnel years. Roughly 6 of those PYs address surface water protection, 5 address groundwater protection, and 7 address compliance and enforcement. Included in these duties is the important task of ensuring program transparency and obtaining stakeholder input. And we do that by holding stakeholder and workgroup meetings, as well as providing presentations in a number of different venues. These pictures are of irrigated land staff presenting at a nutrient management conference, collecting water samples during an inspection, and attending a field tour. Since 2004, the Irrigate Lands program has collected over 280,000 analytical results to assess surface water quality. About 7% of the results have exceeded trigger limits. The largest category of exceedances are for physical parameters such as electrical conductivity or dissolved oxygen. The second largest category of exceedances are for pesticides, followed by metals, E. coli, and toxicity. Identified water quality problems are addressed by the development of management plans. The most direct measure of our program's environmental benefit is the number of surface water management plans that have been completed. Management plans are completed when water quality triggers are met for 3 years, or if it can be shown that irrigated agriculture did not cause or contribute to the exceedance. This figure shows management plan completions since initiation of the effort in 2008. So far, 166 plans have been completed, or about 20% of the total management plans in the region. Many of the completed plans address pesticides and toxicity through coalition outreach and grower implementation of management practices. Sediment ponds and vegetative filters are some of the practices implemented to complete management plans. Groundwater protection is a newer and extremely crucial element of the Irrigated Lands program. Coalitions develop groundwater quality management plans to address high vulnerability areas where groundwater has either already been impacted or is vulnerable to impact. This figure shows the high vulnerability areas in our region, highlighted in brown. To protect groundwater, staff works with coalitions to assess practices being implemented by growers as reported in farm evaluations and nitrogen management reports to evaluate the need for additional practices. Also, staff is overseeing the coalition's efforts to identify protective practices as well as develop a metric to assess groundwater protection through the Management Practices Evaluation Program, or MPEP. Grower enrollment and reporting are essential to the program and the primary focus of our enforcement efforts. Enforcement for failure to enroll in the program has resulted in penalties of up to $64,000, and failure to submit reports has resulted in penalties of up to $26,000. Enforcement efforts coupled with Water Board and coalition outreach have successfully increased irrigated lands enrollment by 23% since 2012. Much was accomplished during the last fiscal year, including the review and approval of groundwater high vulnerability areas, a process to calculate nitrogen removed from crop yield, and templates for reporting nitrogen management and controlling sediment discharge. Last fiscal year, enforcement was focused on grower non-enrollment and foothill areas with significant pasture to orchard conversions. Also, irrigated land staff conducted over 3,000 inspections, mostly to assess whether operations needed to enroll. In conclusion, staff will continue to prioritize the enforcement, groundwater, and surface water protection elements discussed earlier, with an emphasis on nitrogen management. This concludes the Irrigate Lands overview. Next, you'll hear from the East San Joaquin Coalition on the successful implementation of their surface water quality management plan.
I'm Perry Clausen, Executive Director of the East San Joaquin Water Quality Coalition. My job is to represent farmers to the Regional Water Quality Control Board and assist them in adopting practices that are protective of surface and groundwater. I'm going to go over the nitrogen summary report. Growers have been very receptive to changing practices. They work these lands, they live near these waterways, so they're very concerned about protecting the resources that are part of their operation and surround their farms. So when we started sampling in 2004, I was skeptical that we were going to find the problems that the Regional Water Board had described before they developed our regulation. The first time these results came across an email, I was amazed. I picked up the phone, called Michael Johnson, and said, "Are we sure that these results are accurate?" When I received the email with those results, the surprising thing wasn't there was just 1 or 2 waterways with pesticides. Every single waterway that we were sampling had pesticides, nutrients, or other constituents that were above the standards set by the state. The problems that we were finding initially were insecticides applied to almonds, walnuts, and alfalfa, especially across the regions, the eastern side of our valley, where the orchards were planted very close to the waterways. When we find a pesticide in the water the first time, that's a red flag. But when we find it twice, that triggers the initiation of a management plan. And a management plan has 3 simple requirements. Find out the source of that exceedance, what are the potential crops that it's used on, and then work with growers to solve those problems. At first, as we had been doing for years, we held meetings with growers at restaurants and agriculture facilities, went over the problems that we had found, showed them the crops we believed were the cause of the problem, and worked to encourage growers to adopt practices. Unfortunately, after 6 months or so, we still were finding exceedances in these waterways. So what we started to do was map our regions to try to focus in on where these sources of products could be coming from. And that's when we used our GIS mapping, and we identified our members that were adjacent to the waterways as a starting point to try to determine where the source of the problem was. We had to select our priority watersheds, in other words, the waterways with the most number of exceedances. So we selected Dry Creek in Stanislaus County as our first sort of prototype of how we would address these problems. The most common insecticide exceedance that we were seeing in that waterway was chlorpyrifos. This is a product used in almonds, walnuts, and alfalfa, all of which were grown in the Dry Creek watershed. Myself and Wayne Zipser got in our truck, drove out to that area, and started visiting with growers one by one, sequentially from the sampling site all the way up to the foothills. So over about a 4 to 5 month period, we visited over 30 growers that were farming adjacent to that waterway. So when we looked at the practices that growers were using to apply these products, we noticed the other pathways that these products make their way in. Winter storm runoff or irrigation drainage weren't possible because the growers had irrigation systems such as micro sprinklers and drip, and there was no storms occurring in the middle of the summer. So that left spray drift as our culprit, a potential culprit for causing these exceedances. So as we started having outreach meetings with these growers, meeting with them, we especially emphasized when they were making applications next to these waterways to be extra careful to ensure the wind was blowing away from the waterway, that the outside nozzles were shut off, and that they did everything they could to prevent spray drift from moving into these waterways. Since we started sampling in 2004, we've taken over 2,600 samples and performed more than 77,000 analysis of those water samples to determine if there were farm inputs making their way into waterways. That has cost us over $10 million. After the grower visits began, we started seeing results immediately from our visits. It was the following season's applications where we started to see a dramatic decline, in fact, an elimination of the exceedances in Dry Creek watershed. 3 years after having a summer with 2 insecticide exceedances, chlorpyrifos was no longer detected in samples collected from Dry Creek. Now, 6 years later, since we started taking this approach, it's rare that we get a report back with an exceedance of a pesticide standard or any toxicity. In fact, we go through a whole summer with maybe 1 or 2 exceedances that have been found throughout the 25 waterways that we sample. The management practices that growers are using are not unique to the region of the East San Joaquin Coalition. What is unique is the outreach approach, the one-on-one personal contacts that we've used with dozens and dozens of growers. No one had done that before in the Central Valley. We had no idea if it was going to work, but we found, and the growers proved, that once they are aware of the problem, they are willing to act on those problems.
Hello, Chair Longley and members of the board. This is Angela Wilson, the board's Forest Activities Program Manager. The Water Board's Forest Activities Program was developed in the late 70s with the passage of the California Forest Practice Act, which provides the structure for environmental review of timber harvesting operations on non-federal lands. The board adopted a conditional waiver of waste discharge requirements for timber harvesting activities in 2003 and included activities on U.S. Forest Service lands in that permit. With the program fundamentally tied to the regulation of timber harvesting activities, we aim to ensure water quality protection, participating in the interagency and multidisciplinary review processes led by CAL FIRE for activities on non-federal lands and by the Forest Service on lands that they manage. The Central Valley region encompasses roughly 50% of the forested lands in the state, or approximately 16 million acres. Our region also produces more than 50% of the commercially harvested timber produced annually in the state. The primary pollutant of concern for the Forest Activities Program is sediment, most commonly eroded from poorly designed, constructed, and/or maintained roads and associated watercourse crossings. However, other potential impacts from logging operations exist, including increases in surface water temperatures caused by the removal of shade-producing vegetation and the discharge of petroleum products to surface waters from the maintenance of heavy equipment used in timber harvesting activities. The program invests significant staff resources in fieldwork to ensure water quality protection through the use of best management practices. Staff conducts pre-consultation inspections for potential harvesting projects, pre-project approval inspections once a project proposal has been submitted to the lead agency, active operations, monitoring, enforcement, and completion inspections. Inspections are conducted for projects with varying lifespans, from as short as 120 days to those with no expiration. Program staffing increased from 5 positions to our current 11.1 in 2014, with 9 of those in the form of technical field staff. Field conditions can sometimes be challenging. Other times they can be rather pleasant. But regardless of the weather or the remoteness of the location, program staff now conducts roughly 200 inspections each fiscal year. With an area as critical, complex, and spatially extensive as our region's forested landscapes are, the program is faced with many challenges. From the effects of our recent multi-year drought and the resulting record die-off of conifers, which was recently estimated at 102 million trees, to increased wildfire activity and associated harvesting of the dead and dying trees. In fact, preparation for wildfire, response to wildfire, assessment of wildfire impacts, oversight of post-fire logging, and involvement in research on wildfire and post-fire logging effects drives a significant proportion of our program work these days. The program's current priority projects include the development of a new timber general order of waste discharge requirements, which we plan to bring to the board for consideration of adoption in early 2017. This new order will replace our current conditional waiver of waste discharge requirements. Our priorities also include development of a new permit for non-point source discharges on federal lands, and staff has engaged the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM in the coordination stages of this permit development. Program staff is also working on a watershed-based plan for Battle Creek, which will be the first of its kind, and if successful, could provide a template for efficiently addressing sensitive watersheds and surface waters before a 303 delisting becomes necessary. We are currently involved as subject matter experts for several grants in our region, including research on post-fire logging effects, legacy road assessment, prioritization, and mitigation projects, fuel break projects, as well as working with the U.S. Geological Survey on the development of passive sampling methodologies that will help us understand pesticide applications and their effects in the post-fire environment. Since 2005, the Forest Activities Program has doubled in size to 11.1 positions, and along with that growth came a multitude of challenges taking many forms and involving many local, state, federal agencies, private sector, and special interests. In part, AB 1492, passed in 2012, established the Timber Regulation and Forest Restoration Fund, which provided our region with additional staffing resources in 2014. It requires 100% initial non-federal project review and an increase in field inspections. It also expanded the effective life of timber harvesting plans from a maximum of 5 years to a maximum of 7. It requires increased process transparency and streamlining, along with the development of ecological performance measures and the conduct of an ecological performance evaluation. The Natural Resources Agency has taken the lead in the implementation of the AB 1492 directives and has developed several working groups, of which we are a primary part. Program staff has worked and will continue to work diligently to balance these concerns, all the while being mindful of the board's mission to protect water quality from activities occurring in our forested headwaters. After all, much of California's human and wildlife population relies on the high quality of waters coming from the forested lands in our region.
Hi, I'm Ashley Worth.
And I'm Griffin Perea.
And we're here to talk to you about the Cannabis Regulatory and Enforcement Unit. The Cannabis Pilot Program, consisting of the State Water Board, the Central Valley Regional Board, the North Coast Regional Board, as well as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Northern Region, was established in 2014 with 4 positions allocated to the Central Valley region. The program functions as a collaborative effort bringing together water board staff with law enforcement and scientists with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. In development of the Cannabis Pilot Program, staff experienced a steep learning curve related to the cannabis industry, including the identification of common practices and their potential impacts. Through coordination with law enforcement and getting our feet wet in the field, staff were able to identify the primary concerns related to cannabis cultivation activities. Many of the environmental damages associated with cannabis cultivation often stem from site preparation activities, many times conducted on steep slopes and rugged terrain. Site preparation often involves illicit grading, timber conversion and land clearing activities, as well as road and watercourse crossing construction. Without attention to best management practices controlling stormwater runoff, these types of activities ultimately lead to erosion and sediment discharge to nearby watercourses. In addition to erosion and sediment discharge, other water quality threats at cannabis sites include the improper storage and disposal of fertilizers, chemical nutrients in potting soils, a wide variety of pesticides, fuels, trash, and untreated human waste. Sites can also involve the unauthorized diversion and storage of water associated with irrigation practices. These violations are often referred to the State Water Resources Control Board Division of Water Rights. In identifying the concerns relating to cannabis cultivation activities, the program was headed off by heavy enforcement efforts to send a strong message and to promote a deterrent effect to would-be polluters in the industry. Water Board staff has participated in over 20 joint site inspections in coordination with California Department of Fish and Wildlife law enforcement officers and scientists. These site inspections have resulted in staff's issuance of numerous notices of violation, more than 8 cleanup and abatement orders, and 2 administrative civil liability complaints totaling nearly $400,000 in administrative penalties. Due to staff's enforcement efforts, the program has seen drastic improvement at numerous sites as a result of cleanup efforts related to staff's formal and informal enforcement actions. In addition to enforcement efforts, staff have been actively engaged in permitting medicinal cannabis cultivation sites in the Central Valley region under the Medicinal Cannabis General Order. Permitting and compliance with the General Order requires extensive public outreach and education in addition to coordination with local agencies. Each county has unique ordinances related to cannabis cultivation which must be taken into account when permitting sites under the General Order. The Redding staff have received over 600 applications in 2016, many of which were received between May and September. To date, the Redding staff has issued over 500 notices of applicability. To aid in leveraging limited staff resources, the program was allotted funding to create the Cannabis Identification and Prioritization System, otherwise known as CIPS. CIPS is a GIS-based program that will allow staff to map and trace permitted and enforcement sites, rank sites relative to risk to water quality, and detect changes over time. In full capacity, the Cannabis Regulatory and Enforcement Unit will have 5 positions in the Redding office, 4 staff and 1 senior and program manager, and 1 staff in the Rancho office. Our main priorities for the year will be to continue our enrollment and general order compliance efforts, requiring continued public outreach and education. The biggest challenge that we will see in the upcoming years will be coordination with agencies who are now responsible for regulating medicinal cannabis cultivation and now recreational cannabis cultivation.
It sure has been a busy year.
Yeah, it has.
Thanks for stopping by.
I'm Nicole Morgan, and I'm the MPDS Program Manager. Today, I'll be providing a short overview of fiscal year 15-16.
There are approximately 470 active individual NPDS permits statewide. 26% or 123 of these individual permits are managed by the Central Valley Water Board, accounting for 53 major permits and 70 minor permits. Approximately 25.1 PYs are dedicated to the program, with 15.5 technical PYs dedicated to permitting and 7 PYs dedicated to compliance and enforcement. Currently, the number of permits that expire and need to be renewed annually varies, making it difficult to assign resources year to year and creating a backlog. Therefore, staff implemented a workload management plan to level out the permits that need to be renewed each year and eliminate the backlog by fiscal year 18-19. In fiscal year 15-16, the board adopted the average number of permits consistent with the workload management plan. The top 3 priorities for the NPDS program for fiscal year 15-16 were: 1. To continue to respond to the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance's litigation of the Regional Sand 2010 NPDS permit. The litigation was concluded in June 2016. The second priority was to continue eliminating the backlog and level out the workload each year. 21 individual permits were adopted in fiscal year 15-16 towards this goal. And the third priority was to develop a general NPDS permit for facilities that can meet their effluent limits before they discharge to surface water and Title 22 or equivalent recycled water discharges to surface waters. Staff continue to work with stakeholders and US EPA on the permit and plan to bring the proposed permit to the board for consideration later this year. We currently have 61 facilities in the region that provide tertiary treatment. 36 of these facilities provide advanced treatment. 25 of the advanced treatment facilities are currently meeting or under a time schedule order to meet their effluent limits prior to discharging to surface waters and would qualify to be enrolled under this new general permit. This will reduce the number of individual permits managed by the Central Valley Regional Board and will help level out the backlog. A success story of the NPDS program is the Sacramento Regional Sanitation District's or Regional Sands Eco Water Project. The project is in response to the Central Valley Water Board's 2010 permit. The permit required Regional Sand to upgrade its secondary treatment plant to provide tertiary treatment. The plant is permitted to discharge an average dry weather flow of up to 181 million gallons per day and is the largest inland wastewater treatment plant west of the Mississippi River. The project is one of the largest public work projects in the area and is projected to cost between $1.5 and $2.1 billion. At the peak of construction, the project will bring in additional 600 construction workers on site daily, with approximately $1 million per day in construction expenditures. When including additional requirements in the permits, we have to balance the benefits with the associated costs to implement them. In this case, the benefits will outweigh the costs. The project will substantially increase the quality of wastewater discharge to the Delta. The project includes several components, including disinfection, chemical storage, nitrifying side stream treatment, biological nutrient removal, and tertiary treatment facilities. The upgrades started in early 2015. One of the first projects is the expansion of the flow equalization basins. The work began in early 2015 and is projected to be completed by mid-2018. The tertiary treatment upgrade started in August 2015 with a disinfection chemical storage project which will convert the existing chlorine gas system to a liquid chlorine system to reduce safety risks associated with the gas system. In early 2016, Regional Sand also began the nitrifying side stream treatment project that will reduce the ammonia load to the biological nutrient removal system, or BNR. The BNR will reduce the ammonia and nitrate concentrations in the effluent from the facility. The last component of the project is the tertiary treatment facilities, which are scheduled to start construction next year. These upgrades are ongoing and scheduled for completion in 2023. During the construction of the facility will remain in full operation and will continue to serve a population of approximately 1.48 million people in the cities of Sacramento, Folsom, West Sacramento, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, portions of Sacramento County, and the communities of Cortland and Walnut Grove.
In conclusion, staff are continuing to work towards eliminating the permitting backlog and to level out the workload. In addition, we're working on several special projects and planning to bring the POTW General Order to a board meeting later this year for your consideration.
Hello, Chair Longley and members of the board. My name is Brian Smith. I serve as the Stormwater Program Manager for the region. I'd like to give a short summary of the Stormwater Program and its activities. The Stormwater Program is divided into 3 sub-program areas: construction stormwater, including Caltrans, industrial stormwater, and municipal stormwater. The region's stormwater program has the equivalent of about 10 technical staff covering the 3 program areas. The main goal of the construction stormwater program area is to minimize the amount of sediment that runs off of construction sites during storm events. Excess sediment in waterways can smother aquatic habitat, fill in spawning gravels, impede the ability for fish to navigate, and can clog fish gills. Stormwater from construction sites can also carry pollutants like petroleum products, metals, paint, and construction debris. Construction sites are required to use best management practices for sediment and erosion control. These practices stabilize soils at the site and minimize the discharge of sediment and other pollutants. Water Board staff inspect construction sites before, during, and after rain events to ensure best management practices are installed correctly and that they are effective. On average, we handle around 1,500 construction cases per year. That represents about 25% of the state's total cases, and we perform an average of 560 construction stormwater inspections each year. In fiscal year 2015-16, we conducted 419 construction stormwater inspections. The second stormwater program area is the industrial stormwater program. Its goal is to minimize the discharge of pollutants in stormwater from industrial sites. Similar to construction stormwater sites, many industrial sites also have disturbed soils and sediment runoff issues. Associated with that sediment are industrial pollutants including metals, petroleum products, and solvents. Raw and finished materials for manufacturing may also be exposed to stormwater. Industrial facilities are required to develop and implement stormwater pollution prevention plans that include the use of best management practices. Facilities have to conduct monitoring, collect samples of discharges from the site, and report results to the Water Board. As with the construction stormwater program, much of our staff time is spent out in the field inspecting industrial sites and ensuring that best management practices are being properly implemented and are effective. We have an industrial stormwater caseload of about 1,800 facilities. That's about 19% of the statewide total. And we perform an average of 210 industrial stormwater inspections each year. In fiscal year 2015-16, we conducted 264 industrial stormwater inspections. The third stormwater program area is municipal stormwater. In most communities, there are 2 systems of underground pipes. One is the sanitary sewer system that collects sewage from homes and businesses and delivers it to wastewater treatment plants. The other system is the municipal storm sewer system that drains stormwater away from developed areas to prevent flooding. In most cases, the municipal storm sewer system does not go to a treatment plant. It goes directly into a stream, river, lake, or the ocean. The goal of the municipal stormwater subprogram is to minimize the discharge of pollutants from storm sewer systems. The municipal storm sewer systems are operated and maintained by towns, cities, counties, and other government entities. This is stormwater from residential, commercial, and industrial areas within a community and can carry pollutants including sediment, petroleum products, bacteria, pesticides, metals, trash, and green waste. The concentrated flow of the water itself can also cause erosion in creeks and rivers. Water Board staff conducts inspections and audits to ensure municipalities have effective stormwater management programs. In the Central Valley region, we regulate 31 medium and large municipal storm sewer systems, about 10% of the statewide total. and 126 smaller systems, about 32% of the statewide total. In addition to the core inspections, case handling, and enforcement activities conducted by the Stormwater Program staff this last year, other notable milestones and special projects were completed. One special project was the new general permit for municipal stormwater discharges that was adopted in June 2016. Adoption of this permit was the culmination of several years of work. Proposed future priorities in the Stormwater Program include a continued strong field presence, implementation of the new municipal stormwater permit, and staff training. So in summary, the construction, industrial, and municipal stormwater program areas ensure that our receiving waters are protected from pollutants carried in stormwater runoff. Hello, Chair Longley and members of the board. I'm Brian Smith, and I serve as the Water Quality Certification Program Manager for the region. The Water Quality Certification Program regulates the removal or placement of materials in wetlands and waterways in the state to ensure that the proposed activity will comply with state water quality standards. Such discharges may result from navigational dredging, flood control channelization, levee construction, channel clearing, fill of wetlands for development, bridge piers, docks, or other activities. The program also regulates hydropower projects that require a license from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, such as hydroelectric dams, power plants, and other facilities. Under Section 401 of the Federal Clean Water Act, every applicant for a federal permit or license for any activity that may result in a discharge to a water body must obtain state certification that the proposed activity will comply with state water quality standards. In this video, a side channel is being developed to enhance salmon spawning habitat in the Sacramento River near Redding. The water quality certification for this project ensured that turbidity impacts from the project were limited to short durations and didn't cause impacts outside of the monitoring area. The program also implements the state and federal wetlands no net loss policies, with goals of compensating for wetland loss due to development, with wetland reclamation, mitigation, and restoration, so that the total net acres of wetlands does not decrease. A core responsibility of the program is to review applications for 401 water quality certification for projects that involve dredge and fill discharges to water, including wetlands, and that require U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. Staffing resources consist of 7.5 personnel years dedicated to the Water Quality Certification Program. The resources are distributed between the region's 3 offices, with 1 PY in the Fresno office, 2 in Redding, and 4.5 in Sacramento. We receive applications and issue water quality certifications for approximately 250 or more projects each year. The number of applications varies from year to year due to a number of uncontrollable factors such as the economy. In fiscal year 2015-16, we received 328 water quality certification applications and issued 334 certifications. This eliminated a backlog of applications that had developed over several years. We also conducted 45 field inspections. Staff coordinates with the Army Corps of Engineers by participating in pre-project discussions to ensure that a project complies with state water quality standards under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. Program staff conduct field inspections to assure compliance with the approved water quality certification. Field inspections help to ensure that water quality and wetlands are protected. A priority goal of the program is to increase our ability to conduct compliance inspections, with appropriate enforcement action to be taken as needed. Program staff have targeted at least 10% of certifications for inspection. Program activities also include participation in Habitat Conservation Plan programs. A Habitat Conservation Program is required under United States Endangered Species Act for private and non-federal public projects that may result in the destruction or take of an endangered or threatened species. The plans minimize or mitigate the impact to a listed species by protecting the species habitat. Program staff participate in the Interagency Review Team for the Central Valley In Lieu Fee Program. The In Lieu Fee Program provides compensatory mitigation for impacts to waters of the United States and waters of the state, including wetlands. 2 performance targets have been established to ensure that the large number of applications are processed in a timely manner. The first aims to provide initial regulatory action for 95% of individual 401 applications within 30 days of receipt. The second target aims for 95% of individual 401 certifications to be issued or denied within 60 days of all supplemental information being received. Proposed priorities for the program in fiscal year 2017-18 are to continue the development of tools to streamline the water quality certification review and issuance process so that staff resources are freed up to build a stronger compliance and enforcement component. Another priority is continued staff training and development. In conclusion, the Water Quality Certification Program serves to protect the beneficial uses and quality of waters of the United States and state, including wetlands. The program is committed to the no net loss policy for wetlands and the goal of a long-term net gain in the quantity, quality, and permanence of wetland acreage.
Hi, my name is Ann Littlejohn. I'm the program manager for the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, otherwise known as SWAMP. I'm here today with the program coordinator, Alicia Wenzel. Come join us out in the field today and we'll tell you more about our program, what we've accomplished this past year, and what we're planning ahead for the next year.
The SWAMP program coordinates all surface water quality monitoring conducted by the state and regional water boards. SWAMP conducts water quality monitoring directly and through collaborative partnerships, providing numerous reports, fact sheets, and tools, all designed to support water resource management in California. Our program goals are to evaluate ambient water quality, beneficial use protection, and potential sources of impairment. We also evaluate the effectiveness of the Water Board's water quality improvement policies. And we strive to coordinate internal and external monitoring efforts to leverage limited resources and ensure timely availability of monitoring results. The Central Valley Water Board SWAMP program has the equivalent of 4 full-time positions and 8 temporary scientific aid positions spread throughout its 3 offices. During the 2015-16 fiscal year, SWAMP completed its 9th season of monitoring to assess recreational safety in Central Valley's rivers and streams as part of our Safe to Swim program. Water is collected from popular or impacted swimming areas and analyzed back at our lab for E. coli indicator bacteria levels. SWAMP and the Department of Water Resources also began their 8th year of coordinated water quality trend monitoring in the Sacramento watershed. Water samples were taken quarterly at 56 sites throughout the watershed and analyzed for a wide range of constituents. In 2015, Fresno staff initiated monitoring in the Tule River watershed as part of the multi-year Tulare Lake Basin rotational monitoring program. In addition, SWAMP contract resources continue to support targeted toxicity monitoring as part of the Delta Regional Monitoring Program's monitoring designed to assess impacts of current use pesticides. SWAMP resources also supported sediment studies conducted by scientists at the University of California, Davis. These assessments characterized and evaluated cumulative impacts of sediment in the Colusa Basin and Battle Creek watersheds. This fiscal year, SWAMP is continuing our efforts with the Safe to Swim program with a targeted microbial source tracking study. Down in the Tulare Lake Basin, the Kern watershed is being monitored as part of the rotational monitoring program. SWAMP will also continue the support of the Sacramento watershed coordinated monitoring program and toxicity monitoring in the Delta and the San Joaquin River watershed. Central Valley Water Board staff are also receiving training in identifying and sampling toxic algae. Cyanobacteria and other harmful algal blooms have increased in geographic range, frequency, and severity in recent years. SWAMP staff has been working with our regional coordinator and the State Water Resources Control Board to conduct initial bloom response monitoring as needed, such as the sampling that was conducted by the Redding staff in Shasta Lake
and by the Fresno staff in Lake Isabella this past summer. Thanks to the hard work and strong commitment of the staff at the Central Valley Water Board, the SWAMP program continues to successfully meet our program goals and objectives. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Hi, this is Michelle Wood, the Program Manager for the Non-Point Source 319H program. Today I'll give you a little information about the Non-Point Source 319H program and its accomplishments in fiscal year 15-16. The 319H program is a federally funded effort to address non-point source discharges. 319H funded activities are just a small part of the broader Central Valley non-point source program, which includes the Irrigated Lands program, Forest Activities program, and other larger programs. Federal 319H resources are used to fund Water Board staff time and 319H grants for projects that implement on-the-ground management measures to address water quality problems resulting from non-point source pollution, primarily in watersheds with adopted TMDLs. 319H funding supported 3.4 personnel years in fiscal year 2015-16. That 3.4 PY was spread across 11 staff throughout all 3 of our offices and equated to about 5% of all staff time for non-point source efforts in the Central Valley region. In fiscal year 2015-16, 319H funded efforts focused on the implementation of the Clear Lake Nutrient TMDL and the Grasslands Selenium TMDL. In addition, we conducted staff outreach and technical support to groups implementing integrated regional water management programs and other watershed efforts, regardless of their TMDL status. Staff also managed 4 non-point source 319H grants and executed a 5th grant. 2 of the grants implemented best management practices to reduce sediment and phosphorus loading to Clear Lake from Forest Service roads in the Middle Creek watershed and gully erosion in the Upper Willow Creek watershed. In my next slides, I will highlight the Middle Creek project. In 2011, the 319H program awarded a grant to the West Lake Resource Conservation District to conduct the Middle Creek project. The project area is just north of Clear Lake, within the Mendocino National Forest. The Forest Service was a major partner in the project. The RCD and Forest Service implemented best management practices to reduce erosion and sediment delivery to Clear Lake. This picture shows an example of a project road with an in-slope ditch, where water can build up energy and momentum as it flows down gradient, which causes erosion. To address this type of erosion, the RCD and Forest Service graded and outsloped approximately 28 miles of road. Outsloping causes surface water to drain to the downhill side of the road, where it is dispersed and absorbed. In addition, the grantees constructed a total of 7 rock crossings and 967 rolling dips, and they cleaned and replaced numerous culverts. In all, the project improved 42 miles of native surface roads. Post-project monitoring and modeling determined the project resulted in an 80% reduction in hydrologic connectivity. The sediment loading to Clear Lake was decreased by 1,200 tons per year, which is about a 50% reduction. This was a very successful grant project. This concludes my briefing for the Non-Point Source 319H program, the small program that contributes to making real-time, on-the-ground improvements for water quality.
That's not it, Dr. Longley, but it's a good place to break for a comfort break, I guess.
We will break for a comfort break, but before we do, I want to commend you very, very much on a great job. And I didn't realize that we had an Academy Award nominee in the person of Perry.
Yeah, that was we decided on 3 programs to highlight special projects, and we did ag, but Perry was putting that together anay, so that was quite nice.
Well, what I liked about that, and I kidded, but all kidding aside, I think that gave a very important insight into a very important program.
It does.
And the graphics on that, I think, kind of point to the standard that we need to work towards.
Yeah, showing those pictures of all those growers in one room trying to learn this program was pretty
Well,
impressive.
just the graphics on, for instance, on spray drift.
Well, that's true
were-
too.
were very
The water
important.
quality, but
Yeah.
we've always questioned whether how dedicated the growers were, and seeing those auditoriums
Exactly.
full of them was pretty impressive.
So please be back here at 10:30. If folks could take their seats, please.
They don't get to play.
Hey Pamela, like you're great. You totally like me. This is so good. Like you know, you were good, but this is better.
My monotone that put you to sleep?
No, that's
You don't miss
Oh yeah, the narration. I was like, Pamela's a great voice for narration. It was really good. Yeah. But I mean, having all these different people in there.
We're back in session. So if we could continue the showing.
So now I'd like to introduce you to our groundwater protection program that involves our irrigated lands, oil and gas program, our CV salts, our cleanup program, our underground storage tank, or UST, the WDR program, our waste discharge requirements, our mining program, our land disposal program, and our confined animal programs. Each of the program managers will now introduce those for you.
Hi, I'm Jean Chilcott, the Planning Program Manager working out of the Rancho Cordova office. The planning program evaluates changes occurring in our region to ensure that our basin plans are effectively protecting beneficial uses through our regulation and policies. Our projects typically take quite a while, 3 to 10 years, because any changes to our basin plans are reflected in all of our regulatory programs. So when we make a change, we want to be sure that it's reasonable and feasible.
We consider the physical diversity of the region, ranging from the Sierra Nevada to the Delta and the Tulare Lake bed, and the variety of and often competing beneficial uses. We take the time to ensure that the science is valid and that we've coordinated with stakeholders to really understand their concerns before we make any recommendations. The planning program accounts for a little under 10% of the resources in the region, or roughly 23 staff. The resources are divided into 4 subprograms: General Basin Planning, TMDLs, the Delta, and CV salts. Though most planning efforts are long-term, during fiscal year 15-16 we did complete and continue to implement some projects. Notably, we completed edits and updates to both basin plans of previously adopted amendments. We updated the groundwater protection strategy. We continued to implement the salinity control program in the lower San Joaquin River, including phasing in a real-time salinity management component. And we continued coordination with Department of Pesticide Regulation and US EPA Office of Pesticides on pesticide use regulations. However, most of fiscal year 15-16 was spent on developing the foundation to complete major long-term projects during this fiscal year. I'd like to highlight a few of these major projects now, including the Integrated Report, Pyrethroid Control Program, Statewide Mercury Control Program for Reservoirs, and elements of the 2014 Delta Strategic Plan. First, the Integrated Report. The report is required under the Clean Water Act and is an evaluation of the overall conditions of surface water within our region, as well as a list of water bodies with impaired beneficial uses due to discrete constituents. Staff began the evaluation of more than 8,000 miles of rivers and streams
and over 640 water body segments for over 200 different constituents. Once the evaluation began, we diverted the equivalent of 5 staff, as well as an additional administrative and temporary staff, to support this effort in order to meet tight timelines and ensure careful consideration of each data point as well as a robust analysis. The extra effort was critical for this project since either a TMDL or some other regulatory control effort must be developed for every identified impaired water body to ensure that beneficial uses and water quality objectives are met in the future. We've also begun developing a pyrethroid control program. Pyrethroids are effective pesticides used in both urban and agricultural environments. Findings through the integrated report have also shown toxicity in surface water bodies. Any control program needs to balance impact to users, dischargers, and the environment. There are significant challenges in developing this program, including the very low levels documented to cause toxicity and the significant reductions that will be required of all dischargers. The limited information on treatment alternatives, effectiveness or cost, and possible unintended consequences, including mandatory minimum penalties on dischargers that have little or no control of the source of the pyrethroids. 3 public workshops were held in 2016 to have an open discussion and debate on the protective concentration goals, analytical limitations, and implementation options. Findings from these workshops help formulate the control program that will be considered this year. Staff at Region 5 and Region 2 have also been spearheading development of a statewide control program for mercury-impaired reservoirs. The control program would address elevated fish mercury levels in approximately 150 reservoirs and implement objectives to protect humans, wildlife, and endangered species. During fiscal year 15-16, several outreach meetings were held with reservoir owners and operators and other stakeholders to discuss practical approaches for a phased program that includes pilot tests on fisheries management to reduce the mercury levels in the fish. The Delta is a world in itself, and we have several active projects moving forward. One is implementing the Delta Mercury Control Program and Exposure Reduction Program. Entities such as wetland managers and stormwater and wastewater agencies are conducting numerous studies to reduce methylmercury discharges to the Delta, and staff has been reviewing midterm progress reports to ensure that we have sufficient information to reevaluate this TMDL in the future. We have funding in place for exposure reduction activities, and several community groups have received training and small grants to help them provide information to their community members about mercury and Delta fish. Quarterly exposure reduction meetings have been held to support education and networking among the stakeholders, and trained grant recipients have utilized educational material translated into 8 languages to reach out to community organizations in 5 counties. Signs in multiple languages have also been completed and will be posted at popular fishing locations around the Delta. The Delta Nutrient Research Plan is a project that's developing the foundation to determine effects from nutrients on the overall pelagic organism decline and to help us potentially adjust future nutrient regulation. White papers on the available knowledge and data gaps on nutrients' effects on harmful algal blooms and invasive species, as well as modeling needs, have been completed. Stakeholders have been actively engaged throughout the process and are helping with the final white paper on speciation effects, prioritizing future nutrient research activities. The Delta Regional Monitoring Program picked up steam during fiscal year 15-16. Permits were amended to enable participation, a charter and a governance structure were approved, and assessment questions and development of monitoring designs were completed for 4 priority areas: pathogens, current use pesticides with toxicity, mercury, and nutrients, with pathogen and pesticide monitoring beginning in 2015. The sampling design for the pesticide monitoring included monthly monitoring at 5 key locations with focus on monitoring during significant hydraulic events, such as winter storm events and the irrigation season. Preliminary results have been provided by the Pesticide Fate Research Group of the U.S. Geological Survey and indicate that all the samples collected contain a mixture of pesticide compounds. Higher varieties were detected in the southern delta and in urban areas during storm events. The results are preliminary, and more work is being done on evaluating specific constituents and concentrations. And then we have salt. Rather than listen to me explain the salt issue, let's listen to an excerpt from the Salt of the Earth video developed by the Water Education Foundation and co-funded by the State Water Board.
Salinity is a big deal. It's much like a cancer.
Salinity is like arthritis. It gradually debilitates your life.
Societies historically have been killed by the White Death, by salt.
There will be tens of thousands of acres of land that will no longer be capable of producing crops and will be beyond reclamation.
All consumers in the United States and maybe even beyond could feel the effects of it.
We're going to have basically people versus agriculture versus habitat.
It's a ticking time bomb. So it's a problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed now.
We talk about carbon footprint these days, but we also have a salt footprint.
We're going to have to be smarter.
Do you really need to use a water softener?
Do you use liquid detergents? Do you use powder types?
We're in an age of personal responsibility.
I've said on and on, get out of the gloom and doom world, and we can deal with this.
We all cause the problem. We all contribute to the problem. We can all solve the problem.
From the air, California's vast Central Valley is truly a beautiful sight.
Mallards, teal, pintail, geese.
All appears to be thriving, largely due to human engineering. Sparkling man-made rivers bring drinking water to cities and irrigation water to farms, where much of our fruits and vegetables that feed our nation are grown.
Tomatoes, onions, garlic. If the Central Valley were a nation, it would be the largest agricultural producing nation in the world.
It seems comforting when you drive along the interstate and look over to see the workers harvesting your food supply. But here's what you don't see from your car window. Tiny salt granules creeping along rows of tomatoes, pools of white powder taking over lush green fields, a massive sea of salt that is trapped inland with no way to get back to its true home, the Pacific Ocean.
Several stakeholders convened 10 years ago to form the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives Long-Term Sustainability, or CV Salts, initiative to begin addressing salt in the valley. Through tremendous collaboration and a lot of hard work, they completed a Central Valley Salt and Nitrate Management Plan at the end of 2016. The plan has been developed based on 3 priorities: ensuring safe drinking water, balancing salt and nitrate loading, and managed restoration where reasonable and feasible. The process was collaborative with representatives from state and federal agencies, cities, industry and agriculture, water purveyors, and environmental justice. During fiscal year 15-16, the technical foundation for the plan was completed, including the overall salt and nitrate source and fate conceptual model and several white papers reviewing the impacts of salinity on aquatic life, stock watering, irrigated agriculture, and municipal and domestic supply. Implementation alternatives were evaluated as part of the salt accumulation and land transport study, the nitrate implementation measure strategy, and a local case study on alternate compliance measures to deal with legacy nitrate. In addition, several case studies evaluating appropriate application of beneficial uses and level of protection were completed, such as the work evaluating municipal and domestic supply and agricultural supply in a portion of the Tulare Lake bed, and the development of salinity water quality objectives in the lower San Joaquin River, both of which will be considered by the boards this year. The final plan puts all the pieces together and contains a nitrate permitting strategy, a salt management strategy, policy recommendations on application of secondary MCLs, variances and exceptions, offsets, regulation within a management zone, and guidelines for determining maximum benefit. The plan also contains a surveillance and monitoring plan. We'll be discussing all the different components at a workshop on March 9th. Speaking of the workshop, in the next few months you will have the opportunity to meet several of the staff who've been working so diligently on many of these long-term projects. In February, we will begin the hearings on the Pyrethroid Control Program and a process to evaluate appropriate municipal and domestic supply, designation, and level of protection in ag-dominated water bodies. In March, we'll have a workshop on the CV salt and nitrate management plan. In April, there will be hearings on the adoption of a salt and boron water quality objectives for the lower San Joaquin River, and consideration of de-designating municipal and domestic supply and agricultural supply in a portion of the Tulare Lake bed groundwater. And finally, in June, there will be the final consideration for adoption of the Pyrethroid Control Program, the Mune evaluation for ag water bodies, and the salt and boron objectives for the lower San Joaquin River. So we'll be keeping pretty busy here in the planning section, and I have a feeling we'll be seeing you very soon.
Board members, my name is Dale Harvey. I'm a supervising engineer out of your Fresno office, and I'm the manager for the Central Valley Water Board's oil field program. Over the next few slides, I'll provide some information about that program.
California is the United States' third largest oil producing state. Most of California's oil production occurs in the San Joaquin Valley. Each barrel of oil is typically accompanied by 10 to 15 barrels of formation water called produced water or produced wastewater. In 2015, Central Valley oil production generated about 2.1 billion barrels of produced water that needed proper disposal or recycling. Oil production also generates other wastes, including sludges and solids that need proper disposal to protect water quality. There are almost 19 staff now dedicated to the proper oversight of the disposal of oil field waste, as shown on the slide. Assistant Executive Officer Clay Rogers has also been heavily involved in oil field activities. All staff are in the Fresno office because most of the activity is in the South Valley. Oil field program staff work in three broad areas as shown on the slide: discharges to land, underground injection control or UIC, and well stimulation or fracking, commonly referred to as SB4 activities. These are described pictorially and discussed more in the slides that follow. In the first area, staff endeavors to ensure that discharges to land, including but not limited to those shown on the slide, are properly permitted to protect water quality and to pursue appropriate enforcement for those discharges that are not properly permitted. The second area is underground injection control or UIC. In many oil fields, produced wastewater and other fluids are injected into underground formations for disposal and enhanced oil recovery or EOR operations. Staff reviews these projects with the State Board, the State Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources or DOGGR, and the U.S. EPA to make sure that the injection activities are protective of water resources. The third area is well stimulation or fracking. Well stimulation activities are commonly referred to as Senate Bill 4 or SB4 activities. We continue to work with the State Board and DOGGR on the implementation of SB4 and resulting regulations. In 2014, staff put together a work plan for addressing discharges to land. During fiscal year 2015 and 2016, staff continued to implement the plan. Staff circulated for public comment 3 draft general orders to regulate discharges of produced wastewater to land. This included a public workshop in March 2016 in Bakersfield and the presentation of the orders to the board for consideration at its August 2016 meeting. The orders were continued to a future meeting and are currently on track to be reconsidered in April. In 2015, board staff convened a panel of experts from US EPA, our state sister agencies, academia, and industry to advise the board on whether the reuse of produced water on food crops poses a threat to public health. During the fiscal year, the panel held 2 public meetings, 2 closed meetings, and toured Chevron's Kern River oil field and the Coelho Water District. To facilitate transparency,
Board staff developed a website where information and data related to the panel's efforts is posted. With respect to UIC and SB4 activities, staff reviewed and provided comments to the State Board on 10 proposed UIC control permits, 4 aquifer exemption applications, 2 proposed well stimulation project permits, and 4 well stimulation groundwater monitoring plans. Staff also met regularly with State Board, Dogger, and the U.S. EPA on various UIC and SB4 related topics. This slide provides a partial list of oil field staff's enforcement accomplishments for fiscal year 2015-2016. Consistent with the work plan, staff completed 51 cleanup and abatement orders primarily for operators without appropriate waste discharge requirements. The orders cover 165 ponds. Staff also issued 10 revised monitoring reporting programs and completed an $85,000 administrative civil liability order for the illegal discharge of well stimulation fluids to land. Staff completed a cease and desist order for an operator discharging saline wastewater over good quality groundwater and inspected 90 discharge sites. Regarding underground injection control, staff issued 17 Water Code Section 13267 orders requiring information on injection wells that have potentially been in violation of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, and 10 notices of violation to those operators that failed to respond with complete information. That is a quick tour of the oil field program. Thanks for listening.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Stuart Black, and I'm a supervising engineering geologist in your Sacramento office. I'm also your site cleanup program manager. I'm here today to provide you with a very quick overview of the site cleanup program and a summary of our key accomplishments over the last year. The site cleanup program regulates the investigation and cleanup of contaminated sites that are polluting surface and groundwater in our region. In Region 5, we currently have 28 technical and administrative staff overseeing investigation and cleanup actions at over 1,632 sites. These sites include facilities like the one behind me, which is a downtown Sacramento rail yard and is considered to be one of the largest brownfield cleanup projects in the western United States. They also include large military base cleanups, like this waste containment facility at McClellan Air Force Base. Oil refinery remediations, like this soil vapor extraction system at a Shell facility near Bakersfield, which, by the way, removed over 1 million pounds of contamination just in the last year. And at factories like this groundwater treatment facility at Aerojet. We also regulate cleanup at smaller facilities like this groundwater treatment system at a dry cleaning site in Stockton, at plating facilities like this site on the R Street corridor, at pesticide and fertilizer distribution facilities like the sulfur distribution facility in Stockton, and at many other locations throughout the region. In addition to our typical site cleanup responsibilities, we also provide emergency response support at sites like this recovery operation in the Delta and at this tank explosion at 4K Farms in Ripon. The types of pollution encountered at these sites are diverse and include solvents, fuels, heavy metals, pesticides, fertilizers, perchlorate, radiological materials, and many other compounds. These contaminants are very difficult to remediate, but we're making great progress towards our goal. In the fiscal year 2015-2016, cleanup program staff closed over 100 sites and moved 90 cases from the investigation phase to active remediation. To reach these goals, cleanup program technical, administrative, and management staff worked with responsible parties, stakeholders, and the board to prepare a number of highly technical investigation and design documents, and to complete construction and remediation activities like the work you see here, which was a joint effort by CalRecycle, the City of Red Bluff, and our Reading technical staff to consolidate and cap contamination at the old Red Bluff burn dump. In addition to our site-specific goals, staff will focus on identification of new or previously unidentified contaminant sources in our region. To do this, we will utilize the Gamma and GeoTracker databases to develop GIS maps like the source identification map that we just completed for Merced County for 123 TCP trichloropropane. Cleanup program staff will use this tool and many others to continue our work on emerging contaminants. This year, we will focus on hexavalent chrome, perfluorinated chemicals, and TCP. Staff will also continue to work with our stakeholders to complete cleanup projects at brownfield sites so that impacted properties can be put back into safe and productive use for our communities. We will also continue our efforts to identify and track environmental measures like pounds of contamination removed. As you can see, our primary focus will continue to be the protection of water quality and to identify and remediate the impact of toxic sites in our region so that families can live and play in their community without fear of exposure to legacy chemicals that could impact their health. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Newman, Central Valley Regional Board UST Program Manager. We have a short video for you to explain what we do in our program.
The 1983 State Groundwater Protection Act created the Underground Storage Tank Program in California. The two main components are permitting, which is handled by the local agencies, and cleanup, which is shared between the local agencies and the 9 regional water quality control boards. The ultimate goal of the UST program is the protection of water and human health from the effects associated with the release of fuel hydrocarbons from UST sites. This is accomplished by defining the extent of the contamination, identifying potential exposure pathways, determining the amount of exposure occurring, and, if necessary, reducing the amount of exposure occurring. To reduce the amount of exposure, contaminants may be remediated and/or the exposure routes interrupted or removed. Authority to require UST cleanups is found in both the Water Code and the Health and Safety Code. According to the State Board's online GeoTracker database, since 1984 there have been over 8,500 UST releases reported within Region 5. As of December 2016, approximately 7,800 releases have been investigated, mitigated, and the case closed, leaving less than 700 cases open within the region. Of these, about 560 are under the direct supervision of regional board staff, and about 130 are under the direction of local agency staff. This is a figure of an example of the GeoTracker mapping tool with all open and closed UST cases in the vicinity of downtown Sacramento displayed. Within Region 5, there are approximately 14 PYs of technical staff and 2 PYs of management and support staff dedicated to our program. In addition, approximately $72,000 in the temporary help budget supports 4 PYs of scientific aids. 90% of the UST program is funded through the state's UST Cleanup Fund, and the remainder comes from federal funds. No program money comes from the state general fund. In fiscal year 2015-16, the 3 offices combined closed 95 UST cases and moved 45 sites into remediation. This equates to closing about 15% of the open cases within the region in the last year. In addition, staff evaluated every case for closure pursuant to the low-threat closure policy. Sites meeting the policy were directed to begin final closure activities. Activities performed by regional board staff include drafting enforcement orders and permits, reviewing and responding to technical reports, issuing written directives in letters and emails, and meeting with responsible parties and consultants. According to GeoTracker, during the last fiscal year, over 250 closure requests and work plans were tracked, and 99% received a written response within 60 days. In fiscal year 2015-16, staff issued over 1,100 written directive and guidance letters. In addition, staff spends time in the field overseeing drilling activities, collecting split samples to allow for independent verification of data, and inspecting remediation systems. Field visits and inspections are both announced and unannounced to confirm systems are operating and that field activities are being performed properly. This is a photo of staff inspecting a remediation system. The majority of responsible parties work cooperatively with regional board staff and utilize available funding. However, some cases have been found to remain inactive even after formal enforcement due to either extreme responsible party recalcitrance, a lack of available resources, and/or responsible party abandonment of the site. For these cases, we use funding from the State Board's Emergency Abandon and Recalcitrant Fund, the EAR Fund. Though time-intensive for staff, taking an additional 50 to 150 hours per year per site, this program allows us to move sites that would otherwise remain idle to closure. Region 5 is by far the largest user of EAR funds, accounting for over 60% of the statewide cases. Although the majority of UST cases are the corner gas stations that we all frequent, not all sites are gas stations in urban areas. Many of our UST cases are found in rural environments. Commonly, these cases have impacted or threatened domestic water supply wells, and in some cases caused discharges of petroleum to surface water. During the spring of 2016, snowmelt infiltrated a 500-gallon home heating oil underground storage tank at a lakeside residence in the Serene Lakes community near Donner Summit. The water displaced old and abandoned fuels that were in the tank, then flowed across land to the adjacent lake. Serene Lake serves as both a source of recreation and drinking water for the residents of this community. The property owners and agencies responded quickly, and an emergency response effort was initiated, including emptying and removing the underground storage tank, installing multiple sections of booms across the shoreline, and excavating over 1,000 yards of impacted soil. Initial surface water samples indicated the lake had been impacted. Within a couple weeks of the initial cleanup actions, sample results showed no detectable dissolved petroleum in the lake. Groundwater monitoring wells were installed between the former tank and the lake to assess impacts to groundwater. Future monitoring events will be conducted to assess the effectiveness of the excavation and the need for additional corrective actions. This has been a quick tour of the UST program. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Lonnie Wass, a supervising engineer in the Fresno office and the program manager of what's called the Waste Discharge to Land program. This is the largest of the Regional Water Quality Control Board's programs, with over 1,400 regulated discharges and 23 funded positions. Let me spend a few minutes talking about the program and some of the accomplishments in the last fiscal year.
The permitting units are headed by Senior Geologist Scott Armstrong in the Rancho Cordova office, by Senior Engineer Scott Hatton in the Fresno office, and by Senior Geologist George Lowe in the Redding office. The Redding office is not separated by function, but in Rancho Cordova and Fresno, compliance and enforcement are separated from the permitting staff. About 60% of the discharges regulated in the program are for the discharge or recycling of domestic waste. Some of the facilities regulated are very large, like the City of Fresno's regional facility with a design capacity of 88 million gallons per day. Some of the facilities are very small, like the systems that treat wastewater from campgrounds and rural mobile home parks. Many are in the medium range and are regulated not just to protect groundwater, but also to assure that unpermitted discharges do not occur to waters of the U.S. The program includes permitting for wastewater recycling, which historically has largely been for agricultural supply like irrigation of cotton, but increasingly for parks and green belts within the communities. This purple pipe is being placed to move recycled water within the city of Clovis. Industrial discharges regulated by the program are largely associated with processing of crops, including fresh fruit and vegetable processors, wineries, milk and cheese processing plants, canneries, nut hullers, fruit and vegetable dryers. Not all of the discharges regulated are conventional. Some unique discharges regulated by the program include discharges to surface water bodies or fill of wetlands that are not under federal jurisdiction. Some of the program's discharges are doing some pretty innovative treatment. The city of Fresno recovers methane from its digesters, which it burns in gas turbines, producing enough electricity for up to 75% of the wastewater treatment plant's needs. Hilmar cheese is likewise digesting solids in digesters for energy. This is its newest 5.2 million gallon digester that is 28 feet tall and 128 feet in diameter. Mission Bell Winery is using waste heat to evaporate its high-strength waste stream and anticipates removing 250 tons per year of salt, which is hopeful to be able to begin selling soon. One of the big challenges to the program is keeping waste discharge requirements current. Permitting staff have been completing around 25 individual orders per year, the bottom portion of the bars in orange. Last fiscal year, staff completed 24 individual orders. With over 1,400 regulated discharges in the program, staff cannot keep the orders current by drafting individual orders. So we rely on waivers and general orders. In fiscal year 2015-16, staff enrolled 30 dischargers in the board's waivers of waste discharge requirements, the middle portion of the bars, and 43 dischargers in general orders, the top portion of the bars. Approximately 78% of the discharges in the program are currently regulated by individual orders. The individual orders are to be reviewed every 5, 10, or 15 years, depending on the discharge's threat to water quality. That means to keep the requirements current with individual orders, staff would need to present to the board over 100 orders per year.
In 2015-16, staff effected a program called Lean Six Sigma in order to expedite the processing of waste discharge requirements. The goal of the program was to attain a 75% reduction in the time spent on waste discharge requirements, and we achieved a reduction of 65% in the fiscal year. Other accomplishments include the completion of 182 inspections. We were slightly lower than our target of 224 because our target included inspection of some of the oil field facilities, which now is a program of its own. Staff also worked on the on-site wastewater treatment system policy and reviewed 16 local area management plans submitted by the May 13th date and approved 2 of those local area management plans in the fiscal year. In conclusion, there will always be cases that will require individual attention, but as many discharges as possible need to be enrolled in fair and consistent general orders.
Hello, my name is Marty Hartzell. I'm a senior engineering geologist in the Title 27 Permitting and Mining Unit, and I'm the mining program manager for the Central Valley Water Board. Behind me is the Newton Copper Mine, which is adjacent to Highway 88 near the town of Ione in Amador County. This mine operated intermittently from the 1860s to 1946 and produced approximately 5 million pounds of copper. At this site, copper ore was mined from underground workings and then processed at the surface to separate the copper. The mine was abandoned after operations ceased and has left behind in the current conditions since that time. Remnants of mining waste and tailing materials from processing copper ore results in high concentrations of metals and sulfide minerals at the ground surface. Acid mine drainage is created when these sulfide minerals are exposed to air and water and produce sulfuric acid. Acid mine drainage has the potential to introduce acidity and dissolve metals into water, which can be harmful to aquatic life, fish, and humans. This map shows the distribution of mines within the Central Valley Water Board boundary, which pose a threat to water quality. Currently, Water Board staffs oversee approximately 95 mine sites that discharge pollutants of concern or that have impaired water bodies. The mining program has 3 designated core staff consisting of 2.25 PYs who are generally devoted to program management and high priority enforcement cases. These core staffs are mining experts and assist other staff throughout the region in working on mine sites. This includes Jeff Huggins, mining engineer, and Natasha Viditz, engineering geologist. The regulation of mine sites at the Central Valley Water Board is implemented using multiple programs. Staffs working in land disposal, NPDS, non-15, stormwater, site cleanup, basin planning, and non-point source programs assist in working on mines in order for the board to meet its work plan commitments. The mining program's success requires the direct involvement and accomplishment of key tasks in these programs. Water Board staff also need to work with external departments and agencies such as Federal EPA, DTSC, and the Department of Conservation. In November 2016, staff and board chair Dr. Carl Longley participated in a tour of Argonaut Mine, which was led by DTSC. This mine site and the multiple tailings impoundments were recently added to the Superfund National Priorities List and is now a federal EPA lead site. EPA will be addressing cleanup of the arsenic impacted soils near the mine site, and DTSC will be working to retrofit the 100-year-old Eastwood Arch tailings dam to prevent failure. Mining program staff will be working with DTSC to evaluate the discharge of seepage water and stormwater runoff through the winter months. Over the last fiscal year and into the current fiscal year, mining program staff continue work to respond to petitions on the board-adopted cleanup and abatement orders for Walker Copper Mine and the Mount Diablo Mercury Mine. Staff and state board attorneys completed preparing administrative records for these two sites, and the rulings from the Sacramento County Superior Court is expected to be completed by late 2017. Over the last fiscal year, staff also worked with Homestake Mining Company of California and other agencies to provide appropriate permits for cleanup activities at the Central Mines Group along Sulphur Creek in Colusa County. The cleanup work was completed in July through September 2016. For this fiscal year, mining program staffs continue to revise multiple WDRs and NPDES permits and complete numerous mine inspections to evaluate environmental impacts, respond to complaints, and determine compliance with individual permits. Priorities for this fiscal year include rescinding the Spanish Mine NPDES permit and covering land discharges under non-15 WDR. This work will help to facilitate rescissions at mine sites in Lake Shasta area with similar NPDES permits that no longer discharge the surface waters. Staffs also propose to draft a new NPDES permit for the Malakoff-Diggins State Historic Park and to cover the North Star passive treatment system discharges with a limited threat NPDES permit. That concludes my mining program update. Thank you for your interest in the mining program.
Hello, I'm Robert Busby, the Program Manager for the Land Disposal Program. I'm a Supervising Engineer and Geologist in the Sacramento office and supervise 3 seniors and 15 technical staff. The Land Disposal Program consists of a total of 14 PYs of staff with a diverse range of technical skills across all 3 offices. The Land Disposal Program regulates the discharge of solid and liquid waste to prevent water quality impacts. The program implements Title 27 of the California Code of Regulations and is therefore often referred to as the Title 27 program. The primary goal of this program is to contain waste in waste management units such as landfills. There are approximately 175 facilities throughout the region that discharge waste to land, including landfills, surface impoundments, and waste piles. Composting sites are also regulated under the program. New landfills and surface impoundments must comply with the prescriptive Title 27 design and performance requirements. Staff develop waste discharge requirements that ensure the discharger designs, constructs, and maintains the new units in compliance with the regulations. Staff review numerous technical reports and ensure that the required financial assurances are in place. Staff also inspect waste management units to evaluate whether they are being constructed, closed, and maintained in accordance with approved plans. Staff review corrective action remedies including landfill gas extraction and groundwater pump and treat systems. At some landfills, gas is extracted to both reduce the buildup of excessive gas pressures in the landfill that pose a threat to groundwater quality and to generate electricity. This video shows a gas-to-energy facility at an active landfill. New regulations have required more recycling and the diversion of more waste from landfills. Tires, electronics, and other items are also removed from the waste stream. An increasing amount of waste is placed in anaerobic digesters. Staff revised WDRs to incorporate these new technologies. Green waste is diverted to composting facilities, which staff regulate by enrolling the facility under the new State Water Board Composting General Order. The major accomplishments for the fiscal year 2015-16 were revising 9 waste discharge requirements for high-priority Title 27 facilities that have the highest threat and complexity, and beginning the process to enroll composting facilities under the new State Board Composting General Order. Staff also reviewed hundreds of technical reports and conducted 116 inspections, exceeding the work plan goal. Thank you for your interest in this program.
Hi, this is Doug Pattison. I'm a supervising engineer in the Fresno office and also the region's Confined Animal Facilities Program Manager. And I'm here to talk about the Confined Animal Facilities Program, some of last year's accomplishments, and also some of our priorities for next year.
Confined animal facilities are farms where livestock are confined and provided feed for a significant part of the year. This is opposed to grazing, where livestock are spread out more and rely on forage that grows in pastures or naturally occurring grassland areas. Most confined animal facilities in the Central Valley are dairies. There are also a significant number of feedlots for beef cattle and to raise support stock for dairies, such as calves and heifers, and goats and sheep. We also have several poultry facilities, mostly chickens and turkeys, but some ducks and other game birds, such as pheasant or quail. There are more than 1,200 dairies in the region. Slightly more than half are in the northern part of the region and are overseen by the Rancho Cordova office. Dairy sizes range from fewer than 100 cows up to 10,000 cows. Dairies in the northern part of the region tend to be smaller, averaging about 900 cows each, and dairies in the southern part are larger, averaging about 1,800 cows each. There has been a continuing trend in recent years of smaller dairies closing and consolidating. Therefore, the number of dairies has decreased, but the number of cows in the region has actually increased over the last few years. The Confined Animal Facilities Program has approximately 14 PYs of staffing resources, which are equally divided between the Rancho Cordova and Fresno offices. Last year, staff conducted more than 350 inspections. Our goal is to inspect dairies once every 5 years if they are certified by the Dairy Quality Assurance Program, and once every 3 years if they are not certified. One of the things inspectors look for is compliance with the prohibition on improper disposal of mortalities. Dead livestock needs to be transported to a rendering plant or a permitted disposal facility, not buried on site. Another thing we evaluate during inspections is the facility's nutrient management plan. Nutrient management planning is the cornerstone of the program. The objective of nutrient management planning is to ensure that the uptake of nitrogen by crops is maximized and that nitrogen that leaches beyond the root zone and gets to groundwater is minimized. To achieve this, wastewater and manure applied to cropland as fertilizer needs to follow the 4 R's. It must be in the right form, in the right amount, in the right place, and at the right time during the growing season. Last year, staff pursued significant enforcement cases involving unpermitted discharges, failure to comply with previous board orders, and failure to submit monitoring reports. Last year, staff also drafted a general order to regulate poultry facilities, which was adopted last December. And staff has drafted a general order to regulate non-dairy feedlots, which has been circulated among stakeholders and is anticipated to be considered at the April board meeting. Enforcement of the Dairy General Order is an ongoing priority. In order to pursue more enforcement cases and to ensure the newly adopted poultry and feedlot general orders get off to a good start, we may conduct fewer inspections this year. However, we will focus our inspections on facilities that have known or suspected problems or are near a disadvantaged community or threaten a domestic well. I anticipate that we can make up any backlog of inspections in the coming years. Staff will continue to participate in the Dairy Representative Monitoring Program and to monitor its progress towards determining management practices that are protective of water quality. One management practice that we have already determined needs to be modified is tracking the volume of manure and wastewater applied to fields. The general order for poultry facilities requires flow meters to track these volumes, and staff intends to propose this requirement for the upcoming general order for feedlots and eventually in a revision to the dairy general order. Another issue that needs to be addressed in the short term is dairy lagoons that do not have any separation between the bottom of the pond and the water table. Staff plans to identify where such ponds exist and require the discharger to submit a work plan and time schedule to either modify the existing pond or implement an alternative management practice. Staff participates in Cal EPA's Consolidated Permit Work Group to facilitate the permitting of digesters, and coverage under the Water Board's General Order for centralized digesters was recently issued to a large digester in Pixley.
Well, I hope you found this update informative. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the coming year. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dave King. I'm the Operations Manager for Region 5, all three offices. We offer program support and administrative support from a staff of 20 people for a staff of as many as 300. Our job is to provide the day-to-day support and operations that keep our facility running and our technical staff out there doing the work that they've been charged to do by the board.
Our team of 20 staff across all three offices provide the day-to-day support for nearly 300 staff. Our mission is to provide the highest level of service and support as possible. Over the past couple of years, the amount of mail has dropped significantly as more and more dischargers have gone to paperless process when submitting reports. We have more than 60,000 documents for Region 5 in electronic content management, better known as ECM. This has significantly reduced the incoming mail and allows staff to move on the reports more timely to the correct staff and reduces the time to process the paper, allowing administrative staff to work on other projects. We still produce more than 50,000 pieces of mail, incoming and outgoing, each year in all three offices combined. Vehicles. The region's 30 vehicles are driven more than 370,000 miles a year. This requires scheduling, maintenance, and reacting to immediate needs for vehicle issues. Bringing home our staff every day, they go out in a vehicle. Each vehicle is provided a duffel bag for safety items such as rags, hand cleaner, flashlights, bug spray, first aid kits, and sunscreen. We are currently moving documents to and from the State Document Retention Center to support the nearly 1,500 Public Record Act requests we receive each year. We have never received a complaint. We also have access to 18,000 current cases within our offices in our secured file room. All three offices are busy places. We have nearly 8,500 visitors a year in all three offices for board meetings, roundtables, and various training programs. We completed a new lease agreement for the Rancho Cordova site and upgrades to our office that includes 4 electric vehicle chargers available to staff and public. We are looking to expand the current office space in Redding and Fresno to accommodate additional staff for new programs. We recruited nearly 100 new staff for all three offices this past year and implemented a new hiring system from CalHR known as ECOS. We are here to ensure that we help our technical staff achieve the work wherever we can. We strive to find opportunities to make improvements and increase communications to the staff. We process payment checks, order supplies, and process invoices. We process thousands of checks and make bank deposits each week. We hired a laboratory contracts manager as part of our program support unit.
Hi, I'm Brett Braidman, Program Support Manager for Region 5. As you can see from the video, we are a very busy group. We enjoy serving you, and we thank you for your time.
Now that we've completed our discussion of our technical programs, I'd like to discuss a little bit with you some of the organizational and efficiency measures we've done and some staffing concerns that we can be facing in the next few years. First, let's discuss retirement. This chart here shows retirements that started in July 1st, 2015 and projected through June 30th, 2018. As you can see, we have a number of staff planning to retire or have retired, especially in management and technical staff. This would also include the retirement of your executive officer that is planned for May of 2018. We've also had a number of activities around improving the efficiency of our organization over the last year. Regarding portfolio management, this is our third year for our program managers developing comprehensive work plans for their staff within their programs. The process is working well, but to ensure we continue to improve our portfolio management process and to ensure the board leadership is working together as a team, the leadership group meets on a monthly basis. The leadership group consists of the program managers and the executive management team. We are also developing fact sheets. We've recently posted the fact sheets for the fiscal year 16-17 to our website, and after our meeting today, we will be posting the fact sheet for the fiscal year 15-16. In future years, we'll be posting one fact sheet that will provide the accomplishments of the previous fiscal year and the proposed actions for the following year in accordance with our work plans that are approved. In terms of staff efficiencies and being able to produce our work sooner for our dischargers, we've implemented the Lean Six Sigma program in our WDR program and are currently implementing it for our NPDS permitting program. The WDR program has seen some significant improvements in their efficiency through implementing the lessons learned through going through this program. We've also continued to provide leadership educational classes to our staff within the 3 offices through the UC Davis Extension Program and plan to continue these in the future years. We are also taking the steps to develop a strategic planning effort for the board, and you'll be learning more about that as we are currently in the contracting stages to seek support from the Center for Collaborative Policy through the Sac State. We are also beginning to develop our climate change work plan with a workshop planned for March this year. We also have a new activity going on in terms of our licensing requirements for our professional engineers and professional geologists. There have been some changes to the licensing board requirements that we are now looking at to see how we need to implement that through the board, and we'll be providing you updates throughout the year. What we'll do at the completion of this presentation, we'll be reviewing the program manager's proposed priorities for the fiscal year 17-18 work plan development. So in summary, after listening to all these presentations from our program managers, I think you now realize that we have an exceptional and highly qualified technical staff and a superb support staff that are all supported by a dedicated and experienced executive and leadership team. Our staff's been able to do outstanding achievements that are addressing complex issues and having significant accomplishments even while they're being challenged on a day-to-day basis with all the emergencies and issues going on throughout the board.
In closing, I'd like to give credit and a sincere thanks to our technical staff, our administrative support staff, our seniors and supervisors. Without them, we would not have had the significant accomplishments you've just heard about today. And finally, I'd like to give credit and thanks to my assistant executive officers. Their strong support and dedication to me and this board help keep us moving forward to achieve our goals.
So this concludes my presentation for you today. I hope you've enjoyed the videos, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now. Thank you.
Good job, Gene. It was great.
Excellent job, Gene. So. And Denise made a point to me that we also need to give good credit to folks like Gene that take care of our IT and our communication needs. Thank you.
So Dr. Longley, that completes the presentation for all of our programs, but I did have you distribute, I think Kieran mailed them to you and I gave them to you electronically on the priorities, and I need to know if there are any questions or do I get or any additions or changes recommended by the board for those priorities, or do you just want staff to move forward? Because right now they're in the process of creating their work plans for the 17-18. And part of our portfolio management process is that at the first meeting of the year, which would, well, actually it should have been in December, they will have their proposed priorities so that when they start developing their work plans in the April the following year to be implemented on July 1st, they will have the board's general nod of approval for their suggested priorities for the following year.
Dr. Longley, do you mind if I?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say as a new board member, that video was wonderful. I think it really did a great job of bringing everything together visually, the information, seeing all the different managers. It's invaluable to me as a new board member. So again, thanks to everyone. I think everyone does a wonderful job, and it was really thorough and very engaging. So thank you for that. And I did review the pamphlets that Karen sent us, and I think everything looks wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you.
Yes, John, did you? Oh, Carmen, I'm sorry.
So I reviewed the priorities, and the one thing that I noticed that it isn't on there, and I know it's a short turnaround, but I can imagine that there will be some emerging issues based on the rainfall that we've had. And so I'm not sure we were sort of laughing up here when we were, or not laughing, but chuckling that, the stormwater and construction management runoff stuff, that these people must just be running ragged, especially right now with all the rainfall we're having. So I'm not sure where those types of issues are going to emerge, but I think that we should expect that some of those will, and that we have room in our personnel's and our staffing's office life, so that they can react and respond.
Yeah, we have that leadership group meeting, but and that group, the people that you met today on the videos for each of the programs, put together that work plan, and we review them quarterly. And what we do is, if there's things that have to be revised because of those other emerging issues, then we revise the work plan. But this way, we know what our priorities are and the order of the priorities, so then we can make a decision on what needs to be set aside and what shouldn't be set aside, so we can have those more educated discussions about the board's business. So they will be taken care of. Just like when fires, we can't project what will happen with fires, so we just have to deal with them.
Well, I too was very impressed with the presentation. My question's about coordination with the other regions. How does that play out? Is it more of a one-on-one basis? You call somebody in the other region because they certainly got strengths and weaknesses, and how's that work?
Well, we tend, along with State Board and all the regions, we tend to lend more than we get. Our level of expertise in the dance now.
I'm sorry.
State Board borrows our staff quite a bit for some of their Delta work, and other WDRs and other things like that. And also we've let other regions have our staff when they've had responses to fires. At Angela's group with the Forest Activities Program, they have a high level of expertise in dealing with post-fire issues. And of course, Clint and his staff on Cannabis have been dealing a lot with other regions. We meet regularly, the EOs meet regularly monthly, and then they have the assistant executive officers also meet on a frequent basis, and then we also have roundtables where they bring all the state groups together. So there's lots of coordination going on, but in terms of resources, we tend to lend more than we get.
Don't forget about the WQCC.
Yes, and in addition to that, the board chairs most months, probably 10 months out of the year, meet, and one face-to-face, but also during the WQCC. And I don't have the dates on the WQCC this
23 and
year.
24th of October.
In October 24th or 5th or 5th
Something
or
like
6th.
that, and we certainly hope that everybody can attend that. The WQCC is where all the board members come together, and I think, Dan, as you go through the year, you'll see that there is coordination. The other regions, quite frankly, are much different than this region. That there is a necessity for coordination of programs, but we find that in our region, even if you look at in these programs at issues within irrigated lands is a good case. Between the northern part of the region and the southern part of the region, some of the issues are different, and certainly those differences exist also from region to region.
Exactly, but we also, this new
Right.
portfolio management approach and putting our program managers throughout the region, we've been able to make sure that we have that constant communication between all three offices. And the program, this is unique because we may have a staff, a staff who works in 3 or 4 different programs. And so they have 4 different program managers to deal with sometimes, and that takes a level of communication and cooperation, collaboration between all of our managers.
Let me talk about that. Pamela's to be commended for putting this in place because it makes so much better use of our resources and allows the kind of collaboration that has to take place if we're going to have consistency. I must say that when Pamela came on board, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Bob, but I think you would agree with me, we basically had 3 separate regions in Region 5. Each region was operated as a separate entity, and we don't have that anymore. The amount of cooperation between North and South is like I've never seen before.
I can say a few things. First, the WQCC, I had October 26th and 27th, so this certainly would have been a shorter program when I started, and probably even shorter when Carl started, because I think we had 9 or 10 programs, and there's 18 that you talked about here. So it's a more complex operation, and that reflects our world, I think, and it's particularly important in terms of water quality. We can lose things that we can't recover. I noted the number of geologists and the percentage here, and actually the Central Valley Water Board is probably the largest single employer of geologists in the region. So I don't know how much that's out in the schools that teach geology, but I'm sure they probably know that that's one place they ought to be applying. And they're meaningful work that our geologists do. I wanted to thank you for your thoughtfulness and recognition of our support staff. That's not always done, and that's a thoughtful thing. The ag program, I was involved in the formation of that, so it always perks my interest. And I wanted to thank Perry for his presentation, but others that often appear from us are Bruce, who was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here. David Corey's often here. But I think what that presentation said is it demonstrated the need. There was a real need for this. And farmers, I joke, they get kind of gruff. They go off and complain and moan and groan, and then they really get down to work and get stuff done. And the programs have been very effective, and I think we set that up to be as farmer-friendly and farmer-driven or rancher-driven as we could, and I think that's been proven in a lot of respects. And I often talked, when I gave presentations, I said, this will make you defensible. I mean, people will say, how come you're, and it actually comes around with the pyrethroid a little bit, how come you guys are polluting our waterways? And I think ag can say to a large extent, well, actually, we have issues, we fix them, but we aren't the big polluters of our waterways in a lot of respects. So I think that's isn't recognized as much in that program, but that is a side benefit that I think is pretty huge strategically to agriculture in our communities. And the last bit I wanted to mention was climate change. And I was having a little discussion with Angela about the effects of these rains and the high intensity of these rains on road systems and forest issues and so many other issues in our region. And Angela mentioned, I'm not meaning to put words in her mouth, but she mentioned that maybe we should be planning more for episodic events that cause failure, because they're going to be happening, maybe more regularly. And the term that we talked about is resiliency. And ecosystems are resilient when maybe one population somewhere gets wiped out for some reason, but there's other populations around that can repopulate that, or resiliency might be levees, and levees are going to fail, but being resilient when you have the ability to quickly fix them and having things in place. And so as we look at these larger episodic events that might occur with climate change, planning for resiliency is maybe a good approach that, you know, Angela mentioned, and I just wanted to give her some, she probably heard that from others too that deserve some note, but it's a very sound concept about how we approach our events. So when things happen like overflows in wastewater treatment plants, you know, we have to do our enforcement, but I think we can also aid future situations by looking at how to prepare for when these events will occur again, because they will. So that was something that came out of here that is important to me,
That
and I think
should be under our climate change work plan, and
exactly.
that's an issue I've discussed with Andrew, although I do like your term.
The term is a real sound ecological term, and I think these are systems, and systems, the more we can have resiliency in our systems, the better it will be. Thank you for listening.
So, Bob, thanks for bringing up climate change. It's a plug for, I think it's March 28th. So any and all are welcome to have an opportunity to speak and come to the climate change workshop, right? Workshop. It's not a board meeting, but it will be noticed soon enough, and I think notices have gone out to individual stakeholders. So I appreciate that. The word that came to mind when I looked at the video, besides the fact that I think it should be on YouTube, I think it does a great job of showing everybody how diverse the board is and the issues, and there's some great video there. There's some really, I mean, not that I didn't like your PowerPoints before, but
I hated my PowerPoints. That's why you have a video, so you can
but
say
it
that.
just, the words, you know, video's worth 1,000 pictures and worth 1,000 words, and you just get a sense of you know, what it takes and what's out there, and we threw in a little humor, which I appreciated. But the word that came to mind was professionalism. I don't think I could spell it, but the idea that, you know, we're out there every day, we're inspecting. These are real issues with real professionals and the resources that the state is committed to its water quality is impressive. This isn't cheap on our end. It's not cheap for the regulated community, but it's important. And so that's what I got from it. As far as these which were sent to us, I took them mistakenly as informational fact sheets, right? So I didn't pre-review this with the eye of having a feedback, but I will. But they're well done, and you know, once they go up on the web as well, I think they're valuable resources. Thanks.
I was just awed by the presentation. To me, it was outstanding. The new board members had the opportunity to get that and get a grasp of it. You know, you were presenting in, as you know, the PowerPoint, but I mean, it was just so, the clarity was just so great. It really displayed the work of this organization, the tremendous work from the executive staff to the technical support, and of course, as I always mention when I see the administrative support, I said, you know, the executives and the technical people, they do the outstanding job, but we know the work you do to make it happen. And the administrative support is really the ones behind what happened. So I'm just really pleased. You know, I mentioned it last year. I didn't hear anything back. I had no idea, and I heard there were some staff members complaining, but you all did an outstanding job of displaying the programs that you do. And I do agree with John. It should be on YouTube, Facebook. People need to understand water quality. They need to understand it's not just a board here with a lot of technical people that crunch numbers. It gets down to the basics of every person needing quality water and every person having a responsibility to be in charge of improving that. And I think you really displayed that. The one focus, all of the presentations were great, but the one that kind of really stood out to me was the irrigated lands and Perry. I mean, from the presentation to the stakeholders, seeing issue that needed to be addressed, and the regulators didn't say, do it. You saw it. You made some efforts to get it under control. I mean, that's the collaboration I see within the organization, and it was displayed throughout. And tremendous credit to everybody and all the hard work, and I'm impressed to be a part of this team.
Well, thank you all. I have to concur, Facebook and YouTube are logical destinations for this. But the, yeah, the movie theaters. We'll put it on Netflix. There is part of your budget. But I think the video parts in particular, such as Perry's, but there was many others, the landfill construction and so forth, is very descriptive and gives the public a much better feel for the kinds of things that we're involved in. Yes, I did like the recognition of staff. I don't know, you might consider in some cases to put the staff up in the corner of the screen for a moment while it goes on, so otherwise you flick by the staff person, and it's nice to have that personal recognition. Great job. Keep it up.
Dr. Longley?
And you're not retiring, not with stuff like this happening.
Dr. Longley, what about the UFO that was captured over Fresno? Can you address that here?
UFO over Fresno? Well, hey, that's Fresno, so what do you expect? Okay.
The little Muni.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Is there anything else that any board member would like to say? Yes, Raj, go ahead.
I had a question. And this might just be out in left field, but I know when people are assessed the civil liabilities, has there ever been a thought to maybe making them watch a video showing them the effects? Everyone's laughing, but of water quality, of how it affects the water quality. Sometimes
it could be maybe a part of settlement. I don't know.
I mean, it's like when you
you
get a
know, it's
speeding
like
ticket, you gotta
driver,
take
the driver
driver's ed.
training. If you get a ticket, you can come get a reduced penalty if you.
Well, I mean, I think the point of just educating them on how it happens. I think that's.
No, I understand what you're saying, and that some actually part of what we've had before, and if we have any ACLs as a result of stormwater, some of that money went to creating videos for education for contractors and whatnot on the field, in the site. So there are ways we can use that to create videos to educate people about why they're doing it and how to do it and what's the purpose of it. But you're right, because once they understand why they have to do it, it's easier for them to better understand how to go about compliance with it.
I think the short answer is yes, and it actually has been done. Not that video per se, but we've frequently have had settlements that involve steps where there's a lot of training that goes out to folks, and it's not necessarily the training presented by the discharger, but they make all their folks go out to a training presented by a third party to inform them of the effects of water quality and what steps they should take. And then we've also had outreach as varied as in our cannabis program. We've had dischargers that have gotten caught that have incorporated some education and awareness and outreach in the settlement proposals. So the short answer is yes. This certainly could be on the menu for somebody looking to settle their case.
Yeah, 8 hours watching video.
Cruel and unusual punishment, sounds like to me.
And one shout out to the Salt of the Earth video. I think that was given to me when I came on board, and it makes it's a good video as well. So hopefully that's available.
Well, I asked Pamela to have it distributed to board members, so if you've misplaced yours, you're going to have another copy, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll send it out. It does cover the salt issue, the salinity issue. It doesn't address the nitrate so much, so we need to do a similar video on the nitrates.
It's focused on salts, that's true, but and thank you for bringing it up, John, because we're going to be seeing a lot about salt this year and about the CV Salts program, nutrients and salt, and I think for background on the salt side of it, this is an excellent background that's provided in that video. It's professionally done.
Yeah, if you come to my house, you'll see my DVDs. There's Salt of the Earth right next to Star Wars. Right there. Right there in order.
A true disciple. Okay. Anything else that we need to say?
I'll go ahead and tell the managers to use the priorities they proposed. I didn't hear any changes. If you go through if you look through them and you have any
Certainly.
input, just send me your comments through the email,
Thank
please.
you. With that said then, and I'm thank you for bringing up the priorities again. With that said, looking at our schedule for the rest of the day, we have 3 items left on the agenda. And so it's now about 8 minutes to 12. In a minute, we'll adjourn, and we will, how long will lunch take? We have one item that we need to do during lunch, and that's 24. So, I guess we'll be back here at 1 o'clock. Before we do adjourn for lunch, recess, I should say, for lunch, I did not mention on item 18, on item 21, which is board member communications, the working group issue, and we were going to talk about that today. You've had the handout from Kieran, who put it together. So I'd like to have your input on that. I have talked to Dan. Dan's background is ag, and I think it'd be appropriate that Dan's on ag, certainly. Bob, you were on Cannabis, and I would certainly hope you would continue with that. There's nobody else for climate change that's the expert that John is. Certainly, I'd like to continue CV salts. Bob is also the PG&E Land Stewardship Council. Bob, that's terminating in the near future, I understand. Is that correct?
It's probably got another year or two.
About another year or two, right. And then we have disadvantaged communities and delta and wetlands. I think a lot is happening there. We need some focus there, and forest activities in mind. So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
John, you were on the wetlands.
I was on the wetlands, yeah. So I certainly could continue on delta and wetlands.
And in fact, if I'd gone farther, I'd say I already have John penciled in here.
Carl and I talked about that yesterday.
Yeah,
It's probably a
yeah.
good fit.
So let me just make some proposals, and then I'll let you react and say, "Oh no, not there." But it would Dan and myself with ag. Cannabis would be Bob and Carmen. Climate change is John. CV salts would be myself. But I've asked Denise to join me on CV salts. It's a big issue this year. I think we need another board member up to speed on what those folks are doing and a little bit more intimately involved than you are as just as a board member that's not involved with it. PG&E lands, I said before, Bob. The oil fields, including food safety, would be Raji and myself. We are talking about delta and wetlands. That would be John, and forest activities and mines, Dan, and I would join Dan on that. Disadvantaged communities would be a new one, but with the focus on water supply, and I think a good part of that should be the Drinking Water Protection Program. It would be Denise and Raji. Are there any concerns, exceptions? This isn't locked in by any stretch of the imagination. This is just making sure that we identify folks that staff can look to as contact points.
Sounds good to me.
I'll have to thank the governor's office for adding a couple more members because we were spread a little too thin with only 5 of us.
Yeah, that was right. That's right, and that's why this came about.
Sounds fine by me.
Okay, I have a consensus. That's only because I've been talking to folks. Very good. Thank you very much for your service. With that, we are going to go back and we're going to have lunch, but we're also meeting in executive session for item 24. Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Executive Officer of the Central Valley Water Board, which will be conducted in closed session pursuant to Government Code 11126, Subdivision A. Anything else I need to say about that, Patrick?
That is it.
Thank you.